It was another scorching day at the gas station, and I could feel the sweat trickling down my back as I hustled from car to car, filling up tanks, checking oil levels, and cleaning windshields. The summer heat was relentless, but the steady stream of customers kept my mind busy and my spirits high. I took pride in my work and enjoyed the interactions with our regular patrons. As I finished up with a particularly grumpy customer who complained about the rising fuel prices, I noticed an elderly man approaching the station. His clothes were worn, his steps unsteady. He looked out of place, and his eyes darted around with a mix of confusion and worry. The man reached the pump, filled his tank, and then stood by his car, patting his pockets with increasing desperation. I sensed that something was wrong, so I walked over, hoping to help. "Sir, is everything all right?" I asked gently, my voice filled with concern. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with embarrassment. "I've forgotten my wallet at home," he said, his voice trembling. I don't have any money to pay for the fuel." His genuine distress tugged at my heart. Without thinking twice, I pulled out my purse and handed him the money he needed. "Don't worry about it. You can pay me back later," I said, giving him a reassuring smile. The relief on his face was immediate and overwhelming. "Thank you, young lady. My name is Edgar," he said, his voice breaking with gratitude. "I promise I'll repay you." He scribbled down his name and address on a piece of paper and handed it to me. "There's no rush, Mr. Edgar. I'm just glad I could help," I replied. As Edgar drove away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. It was a simple act, but it felt right. Little did I know, my small act of kindness was about to stir up more trouble than I could have imagined. Just as I turned back towards the station, I heard a snide remark from one of my colleagues, Tony, a tall, lanky guy with a perpetual smirk. "Eva, you're so naive," he sneered. "Do you really think that old man is going to pay you back? You've just thrown your money away." I tried to brush off his comment. He seemed genuine. "It's not about the money, Tony. It's about helping someone in need." Tony rolled his eyes. "You're too soft-hearted. People will take advantage of you." I ignored him and went back to work, but the whispers and snickers continued. I could hear snippets of their conversations filled with doubt and mockery. "She's such a pushover," one said. "I bet she won't see a dime of that money," another added. The rest of the day dragged on, each passing hour filled with a mix of anger and frustration. By the time my shift ended, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. As I was about to leave, the manager, Mr. Harris, called me into his office. His expression was stern, and I could tell something was wrong. "Eva, I heard about what you did today," he began, his tone serious. "Did you really take money from the register to pay for that man's fuel?" My heart sank. "No, Mr. Harris. I used my own money," I explained, my voice trembling. He was in trouble and needed help. Mr. Harris shook his head, his face void of any sympathy. "I'm sorry, Eva, but we can't make exceptions. If we let one person delay payment, others might think they can do the same. I'm afraid I have to let you go." Tears filled my eyes as I tried to plead my case. "But Mr. Harris, I was just trying to help. It wasn't company money, it was mine." He sighed, avoiding my gaze. "I understand your intentions, but rules are rules. You should have come to me instead of acting on your own. This is the decision, Eva." As I walked to the back room to clear out my locker, I felt their eyes boring into my back. The whispers and snickers followed me, echoing off the walls. I could hear snippets of their conversations, filled with judgment and scorn. "She always was too soft-hearted," one voice said. "Yeah, and look where it got her," another added. I packed my things in silence, the reality of my situation sinking in. I was officially out of a job, and with my father's medical bills piling up, the timing couldn't have been worse. But despite everything, I didn't regret helping Edgar. I knew in my heart that it was the right thing to do. As I made my way to Mr. Harris' office to collect my final paycheck, I felt a mix of dread and defiance. I knocked on the door and heard his gruff voice call me in. "Eva, come in," he said, barely looking up from his desk. He handed me an envelope without making eye contact. "Here's your final paycheck. I hope you understand why we had to let you go." I took the envelope, trying to keep my voice steady. "I understand, Mr. Harris. I just wish things could have been different." He sighed, finally meeting my gaze. "Eva, you're a good worker, and I appreciate your intentions. but we have rules for a reason. This place runs on order and consistency. We can't afford to make exceptions." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. "I understand. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Harris." As I walked out of his office for the last time, I felt a strange sense of relief. When I arrived home, my mother and father were waiting for me. The look on their faces told me they had been worried all day. I took a deep breath and sat down with them in the living room. "How was your day, Eva?" my mother asked, her voice filled with concern. I took a moment to gather my thoughts before answering. "Mom, Dad, I lost my job today." Their expressions turned from concern to shock. "What happened?" my father asked, his voice weak but filled with worry. I explained everything, from helping Edgar to the manager's decision to fire me. My mother sighed, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Eva. We're proud of you." My father nodded, though I could see the stress in his eyes. "We'll get through this somehow," he said, though I knew the medical bills were piling up and my job had been our main source of income. "I'll find another job," I assured them, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We'll be okay. We'll figure it out together." Just then, my 10-year-old sister, Louise, bounded into the room, her usual energy filling the space. She had inherited our mother's pedic frame and our father's sparkling eyes, and she was wise beyond her years. "What's going on?" she asked, sensing the tension in the room. I smiled weakly at her. "I lost my job, Louise, but it's going to be okay. We'll figure it out." Louise's face fell for a moment, but then she straightened up, determination shining in her eyes. "Mom always says that when one door closes, another one opens. We'll get through this, Eva." "I know we will." I pulled her into a hug, grateful for her unwavering support. "Thank you, Louise. I needed to hear that." As we sat together, the reality of our situation began to sink in. We were facing a tough road ahead, but I knew that with my family's support, we could overcome anything. Dinner was a somber affair, the usual light-hearted conversation replaced with silent contemplation. Afterward, my mother and I cleared the table while Louise and my father settled in the living room. I could hear them talking softly, their voices a soothing background to my thoughts. As I washed the dishes, my mother turned to me, her expression serious. "Eva, we need to start thinking about your next steps. Have you thought about where you might look for another job?" I nodded, though the prospect felt daunting. "I'll start looking tomorrow. There has to be something out there. I can't let us fall behind on bills." My mother smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. "I know you'll find something. You're strong and determined. And remember, we're here for you every step of the way." That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that clung to me. I had no idea what the future held, but I was determined to face it head-on, for my family, for my father who needed me more than ever, and for myself. The next few days were a blur of online job applications and phone calls. I scoured job boards and reached out to contacts, but nothing promising came up. The stress of not knowing how I would support my family weighed heavily on my mind, but I kept going, fueled by determination and the love for my family. One afternoon, just as I was finishing up another round of applications, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and a sense of apprehension washed over me as I approached the door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see a well-dressed man standing there, holding a small envelope. "Hello, are you Eva?" he asked, his voice calm and polite. "Yes, that's me," I replied, trying to place his face. He didn't look familiar. "My name is Jack," he said, extending his hand. "I believe you helped my father, Edgar, at the gas station a few days ago." Recognition dawned on me. This was the son of the elderly man I had helped. "Oh yes. How is he? Is he okay?" I asked, shaking his hand. Jack smiled warmly. "He's doing much better, thank you. I wanted to come by to personally thank you for your kindness. It meant a lot to him, and to me." I invited Jack inside, and he took a seat in our modest living room. My mother was in the kitchen, and my father was resting, so it was just the two of us. I offered him a cup of tea, which he gratefully accepted. As we sat down, he handed me the envelope. "This is the money you used to pay for my father's fuel. He insisted that I return it to you." I took the envelope, feeling a sense of relief. "Thank you, Jack. I appreciate this, but it really wasn't necessary. I was happy to help." Jack shook his head. "You went above and beyond, Eva. Not many people would do what you did. And I wanted to let you know something important about my father. He has Alzheimer's. He was confused that day. And that's why he didn't have his wallet. We're still adjusting to his diagnosis. And it's been tough. I felt a pang of sympathy for Jack and his family. I'm so sorry to hear that. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for all of you. Jack nodded, his expression somber. It's been challenging, but your act of kindness showed us that there are still good people out there. That's why I wanted to come here in person. We talked for a while longer, and I told him about losing my job because of what happened. Jack listened attentively, his brow furrowing with concern. That's terrible, he said. You shouldn't have been punished for doing something so compassionate. I shrugged, trying to hide the frustration I felt. It's company policy, I guess. They have rules, and I broke them. Jack's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. You know, Ava, I actually own that gas station. I inherited it from my father, but I usually let the manager run things. I had no idea what had happened until my father told me. I was stunned. You own the gas station? I had no idea. He nodded. Yes, and after hearing what happened, I realized that changes need to be made. You shouldn't have been treated that way. I've already taken steps to address the situation. My curiosity was piqued. What kind of steps? Jack leaned forward, his expression earnest. First of all, the manager who fired you has been let go. He clearly lacked the empathy and judgment needed for the job. Secondly, I want to offer you a position as the new manager. I was speechless. This was the last thing I had expected. Me, a manager? But I don't have any experience in that kind of role. Jack smiled reassuringly. You have the qualities that matter most: compassion, integrity, and a strong work ethic. I'll provide you with all the training and support you need. I believe in you, Eva. Tears welled up in my eyes and I felt a mix of emotions: relief, gratitude, and a renewed sense of hope. Thank you, Jack. This means more to me than you can imagine. I won't let you down. He smiled warmly. I know you won't, and I hope this new opportunity helps you and your family during this difficult time. Just then, my mother entered the room, drawn by the sound of our conversation. She looked at Jack curiously. Eva, who is this? I introduced them, and my mother quickly grasped the significance of Jack's visit. She sat down beside me, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Jack. This is a blessing for our family. Jack shook his head. Please call me Jack. And it's the least I can do after what Eva did for my father. As Jack left, promising to send over the necessary paperwork and details for my new role, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My family gathered around me, sharing in the joy and relief of this unexpected turn of events. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. What had started as a simple act of kindness had turned into a life-changing opportunity. The morning of my first day as the manager of the gas station dawned bright and early. I arrived at the gas station half an hour early. The familiar sights and sounds greeted me. The hum of cars pulling up to the pumps, the clink of the cash register, the smell of gasoline mingling with fresh coffee. But today, everything felt different. Today, I was stepping into a new role with new responsibilities. Jack was waiting for me, a welcoming smile on his face. He handed me a set of keys and a small binder. Good morning, Eva. Ready for your first day? I nodded, taking the keys from him. I am. Thank you again, Jack. This means so much to me. He patted my shoulder. I know you'll do great. If you have any questions, I'm just a phone call away. The binder has some notes on the daily operations and procedures, but I have no doubt you'll pick things up quickly. We walked through the station together, Jack introducing me to the other employees. Some faces were familiar, while others were new. The air was thick with curiosity and a hint of skepticism, but I greeted everyone warmly. One of the first employees I spoke to was Carla, a young woman who worked the cash register. She had been one of the few who hadn't mocked me during the incident with Edgar. I remembered her kind eyes and quiet demeanor. Hi, Carla. It's good to see you again, I said with a smile. Carla returned the smile, a hint of relief in her eyes. Hi, Ava. I'm glad you're back. We really needed someone like you around here. Thank you, Carla. I appreciate that. If you ever need anything or have any suggestions, please don't hesitate to come to me. She nodded, her expression sincere. I will. It's nice to know we have someone who genuinely cares. Throughout the day, I familiarized myself with the various aspects of the station's operations. I checked inventory, reviewed sales reports, and observed the interactions between employees and customers. I wanted to get a feel for the rhythm of the place and identify areas where we could improve. During a lull in the afternoon, I gathered the staff for a brief meeting. I wanted to set the tone for how I intended to lead. Thank you all for taking a few minutes to meet. I began looking around at the group. I know this transition might feel a bit sudden, but I want you to know that I'm here to support each and every one of you. My door is always open, and I value your input and feedback. Together we can make the station a better place for both our team and our customers. There were murmurs of agreement, and I could see some of the initial skepticism beginning to melt away. Later I was approached by Mike, one of the employees who had been particularly vocal in mocking me during the Edgar incident. He looked nervous, his usual bravado replaced with uncertainty. "Eva, can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, shuffling his feet. "Of course, Mike. What's on your mind?" I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He scratched the back of his neck, avoiding eye contact. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I was out of line the other day, and I didn't understand the situation. You were just trying to help that old man, and I shouldn't have been so quick to judge." I appreciated his apology, recognizing the effort it took for him to admit he was wrong. "Thank you, Mike. I accept your apology. Let's put it behind us and work together to create a positive environment here." He nodded, visibly relieved. "Thanks, Eva. I'll do my best." As the day drew to a close, I felt a sense of accomplishment. It had been a whirlwind of activity, but I could already see the beginnings of a more cohesive team. I knew it would take time to build trust and foster a supportive atmosphere, but I was committed to the journey. That evening, as I walked home, I reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. I had gone from being an out-of-work gas station attendant to managing the very place that had fired me. It was a testament to the power of kindness and the unexpected opportunities life could present. When I arrived home, my family was waiting for me, eager to hear about my first day. My mother had prepared a special dinner to celebrate, and my father, though still weak, was beaming with pride. "How was it, Eva?" my mother asked as we sat down to eat. "It was great, Mom. There's a lot to learn, but I feel good about it. The team is starting to come around, and I think we can really make some positive changes." Louise, my little sister, looked up at me with wide eyes. "Does this mean you get to be the boss now?" I laughed, ruffling her hair. "Something like that, Louise. It means I get to help make things better for everyone." My father raised his glass, his voice filled with emotion. "To Eva for her strength, compassion, and new beginnings." We clinked our glasses together, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a deep sense of hope and optimism. The road ahead might still be challenging, but I was ready to face it with my family by my side and a renewed sense of purpose. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but smile. What had started as a simple act of kindness had turned into a life-changing opportunity, not just for me, but for my entire family. And I knew that with hard work and determination, the future held endless possibilities.